playing field is just going to be completely leveled. Most brands out there are going to have access to the same skill in terms of media buying because AI is going to be doing that. The businesses that win are the businesses who can spend the most to acquire a customer. At a time where AI is leveling the playing field out there for businesses and brands, it is more important than ever to focus on those small 1% gains that you can make. So in this episode today, that is exactly what we're going to be covering, how you can build a competitive moat around your business to stand out from any other brands or businesses out there and gain the competitive advantage. Jane.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about the kind of 1% gains. I think this is something that you are an absolute expert on, right? Because you obsess over the details. And I think this is just going to become more and more important over the coming months, especially with more emphasis on AI. And as AI starts taking over a lot of things like media buying, this is happening much faster than I think a lot of businesses expected. And what that means is that the playing field is going to be completely leveled, right? So for the businesses who, maybe you have an advantage right now because you've got an absolute, expert at meta ads, this is going to be now completely leveled out. And what's basically going to happen is that brands are going to have to compete on those small 1% gains, right? Your branding, your content, your messaging, and also how well you can create that back end value. One of the big things I know we've been speaking about recently, the little small things that can go a really long way to kind of increasing like customer loyalty and also getting customers to spend more as well. And I think you mentioned some of your time in like the hospitality industry when you used to work in hospitality.
When you are a waitress, let's say, and you have a big amount of tables to serve, speed is the most important thing, speed and attention to details, right? And so typically the kind of the waiting staff salary or wages are quite low. And so you're heavily relying on your tips at the end of the service. And so how you serve that table, speed and attention to details is what basically puts the tips in your pocket at the end of the day. It's that being super observant in terms of who your clients are, customers are at the table that you're serving. Are they a couple? Are they a group of friends? Are they business colleagues? Maybe, it's a business lunch meeting or dinner meeting. And so according to that observation, you then tailor your service, basically.
Reminds me of this book. I can't remember what it's called. Is it like it's like Unreasonable Hospitality or something?
Yeah.
And he talks in that book. He gives an example if there's like a particular restaurant, and he says like when people call in, and they might say, "Oh, we've got an anniversary dinner," for example, and they will then find out like, "Oh, where did you guys meet?" And they will go out and they will like recreate. They will like reserve a special section in the restaurant for them, and they will like recreate the scene where they met.
Yeah.
Like it's that kind of like obsession over the customer experience and every tiny little thing. The way in which this ties back, you mentioned like getting this for you, it was about getting tips in your pocket at the time. But for a business, that comes down to how much customers are going to spend with you.
Yeah.
It comes down to, are they going to come back or not? Are they going to keep working with you? This is where these are things that it's very easy to, I think, overlook those things, especially like most businesses are focused purely on acquisition. It's an easy trap to fall into. It's like, how can we get more customers? How can we acquire customers for a lower cost? But the thing that a lot of businesses don't think about, well, if you can maximize your customer value, you don't have to worry so much about the cost per acquisition, right? Because if your CAC to LTV ratio is big enough, you can afford to spend more. And I think the businesses that win are the businesses who can spend the most to acquire a customer. I think it was like Russell Brunson that said that once, and it's so true, because there are always going to be days where if you're running Google ads or meta ads, like the algorithm just throws a bit of a wobbly, right? And you lose all your results, your ROAS tanks. If you've got enough value in your customers, enough lifetime value, you can ride out those waves. Right. And that's where those 1% gains come in. There's to shout out one of our clients, actually, Minimalist, who's a kind of retailer based in the UAE. They do this incredibly well. And like they actually showed us some of the kind of how they send products to customers. They send out these amazing like presentation boxes. They have like a handwritten note that goes out from the owners of the store. And that's just a perfect example. It's such a small thing, actually, when you think about it. If you operationalize that, sure, it might bump up your cost by a little bit. And this is what most businesses don't see. It's that short-sightedness. It's that, we don't want to increase our cost. We don't want to do that. It's just unnecessary. But what you don't see is the impact that has on making that customer come back and spend more, because you could be potentially doubling your customer value from that alone, and you're now quibbling over this little additional cost that has been added on.
Totally agree. I would say acquiring a customer may be the easiest part. It's keeping the customer happy, satisfied, adding extra value for as long as possible. That's the difficult part that a lot of businesses overlook. And once again, analogy to the restaurant, the customer walks through the door, they're already there. You got them. So now is the difficult part.
Yeah.
Now is the part where you upsell them on drinks, upsell them on starters, upsell on the additional side orders, etc. Maybe offer the most expensive special. That's the difficult part, right? But then it all comes down to this initial conversation that you have with your customer. What are they in a rush? Is it a quick in and out? Or is it a special occasion? And that will then dictate how you serve this customer while the customer is at the table or within your business.
It all comes down to the experience, right?
Yeah.
I remember when you were doing soul senses back in the day. For anyone watching, Jane, this was your ecom brand you started, right?
This
back in the
was
day.
my baby
Yeah, with your
experiment.
essential oils.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things you used to do was wouldn't you kind of put like a drop of the essential oil in the box or something, so it's kind of scented when people open it. And again, I think that's a really nice example of those little touches. And I remember I bought some perfume, some aftershave recently from Penhaligon's, and they do the same thing. Like, when they're putting everything in the box, and they kind of get this like a kind of silk cloth thing, and they spray your fragrance on it, and then they tie the bag in a ribbon with this cloth, and it's like scented with what you've got. And there's like just little touches like that. It's like these little things that just go like such a long way.
I used to write handwritten notes for every single order with personalized messages, addressing the customer who purchased, or if it was a gift to the receiver of the gift. Yes, it would take a lot of time, personal time, but it was guaranteed for me to get 5-star reviews for every single order. So that extra little time and effort is just paid off.
Yeah. And I think
big time.
What a lot of people don't think about as well is how those 5-star reviews compound.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you get, and I've seen this before, we've seen this like on CRO tests with customers, where if you just get one amazing review, that review, I've seen it before, like just a quote from the right quote from a customer, you can get that to double your conversion rate on a page.
Yeah.
If you have the right review, if somebody like is so blown away by the service, they just gush in this review, right? And they're like, this is literally the most incredible gift I've ever bought. Blah, blah. And people will do that when they feel it's those things that make somebody feel like genuinely moved. The other thing behind this as well, there's a book that I read recently, I think I was telling you about it, called Contagious. I think it's like Contagious Why Ideas Stick or something, or Why Some Ideas Stick. But in that book, the guy gives this example of how by doing those things, what will often happen is, like, because it's so unusual, we're so used to buying things from like Amazon, right? You just get a box, you open it up. When you get like a handwritten note with something, it's so unusual. It's the kind of thing you tell your friends about.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I ordered this thing the other day and I got like a handwritten note in there. Like that's built-in virality.
Yeah.
Like, all these brands are trying to find these hacks to go viral, and it's like you've literally got a built-in virality factor from that alone. The other thing that people don't think about as well, not just telling your friends, but you're going to take a picture of it. You're probably going to send it in your WhatsApp group. You'll be like, oh my God, look at this thing that I just got. Like,
absolutely.
People do not think about that. And I gave this example recently in a video I did about company called CD Baby back in the day. I'd never actually bought anything from them, but I just heard about this through the grapevine. And they used to, I think I showed you that email, didn't I? They send out that email and it says like, you know, thank you for your order. We're placing your CD on a satin pillow. And it's like this, it's kind of like a parody. It's like this funny email. It's not like
Yeah.
serious, but it's just so wild and wacky.
And it's memorable as well.
Exactly, that people just share it. They couldn't help but share it. And it got so much press and publicity just because it was hilarious and people shared it. And it's like, we just don't think about those things.
I'll give you another example. It's in a space of food delivery. So with like service like Deliveroo, occasionally, I must admit, I do order McDonald's just when I'm like really busy or hungry
Shocking, Jane.
or craving
Shocking.
for some crappy food. But it's easy, it's fast, you know, you know what you're getting, and that is exactly what you're getting. It's like Amazon, right? You get it in the branded bag, nothing personal, nothing special, you know what's inside, versus Dishoom, which you and I both love. And one thing I did notice is that every time I order from them, there's a handwritten message on the actual bag, delivery bag, and
Who
it is
from Dishoom?
yeah.
I was going to say McDonald's. Like
No, Dishoom. And their bag is very simple. You know, delivery bag is just plain background with a logo, and so there's plenty of space for these personalized messages. But the messages are always different, and obviously, like they probably have me on file as a repeat customer,
Okay.
so that I always get different messages like
That's cool.
thanks for ordering again, you know, or
That's
we
really
hope
cool.
we really enjoy you. We hope you really enjoy your order this time, you know, like so every message is different, and that is so memorable. I think I took some pictures of it. I just forgot to share.
I love that. That's so cool. And it reminds me of you know, the E-Myth book.
Yes.
With the example of the hotel. I can't
Yes.
remember which hotel chain it is. And he says like when he goes there and they kind of little things like they'll say like, oh, what's your kind of favorite, like, and just in
Whiskey.
casual conversation, you know, you don't want to kind of over formalize it, but yeah, what's your favorite whiskey? What's your favorite like nighttime tipple kind of thing? And they uncover these things. And I thought what was really smart, they do have a process around it, but the process isn't to the point where it feels robotic. It's not like you're booking in and they're like, oh, by the way, what's your favorite whiskey? Because then it would just sound weird, right? So it's kind of like when he was having dinner, it was just like subtle conversations with the waiter or waitress. And they then go back and they log that on their CRM.
Yeah.
Right. So the next time he books, they can then have his favorite whiskey waiting on his bedside table and little things like that. And it doesn't take much to do, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much any CRM can do that. Even if you just keep a record on a Google Sheet of all your customers and just little things like that. And obviously there's going to be differences here. If we're talking about a very, high value service or hospitality business, it's different. With e-com, if you're especially lower value, lower ticket e-com store, you can't necessarily afford to do that when you're selling at volume for each customer. But there are things you can do.
Yeah.
Right. And this is where just things like segmenting your email list when people are signing up for things like, and even doing like surveys, being able to segment people based on their interests so you can kind of send relevant notes to them. And
absolutely agree. So just because the business is different and the value of the products or services is different shouldn't stop business owners or marketers or operations teams to think about these little touches. And like I said at the beginning, I think it all comes down to very, very super attention to detail and deep listening and asking the right questions from your customer, whether it's being in the hospitality and your bar staff or waitering staff, or you're on an onboarding call or a discovery call. All these little details, they all become super important later down the line.
And I think, because this also comes down to pretty much all areas of the business, right? And another area that I wanted to get into with you today is on the finance side. And we kind of dived into this a little bit last time, obviously, with your previous life as a former accountant, former corporate accountant. These are the things that you're always thinking about. And I think one of the things that I have become increasingly, I never really understood it about you initially, but over the years I've become increasingly grateful for, is just these little things like your willingness to push back on like payment terms, for example, right? Like when we're bringing clients on board, for me, I was kind of like, oh, well, it's fine. Like these clients just have these payment terms in place. And it's like, well, let's at least ask. Yeah. Like, look, we want cash up front. Like that's what we want. And 9 times out of 10, when you ask, people say, oh yeah, that's fine. Yep. And they'll do it. And it's only now that I've started to realize, like, can you realize, like, as you know, the business grows and you start getting more costs, it's like cash flow is everything, right? So if you don't have that cash in the business, and I remember you telling me this story about kind of like how a lot of businesses like will use like the balance sheet, or was it the kind of profit and loss statement to kind
Yeah.
of,
Yeah, so I think the one of the biggest kind of oversights that businesses are typically fall into, or not fall into, but forget about, is that whilst P&L or profit and loss statement may look really, really healthy, and you might, be making a lot of sales or transactions, or issuing invoices, your actual cash receivable may be delayed, right? And quite often you hear and see businesses having these really rigid and, rigid payment terms, which they created for themselves. 30 days, receivable, 30
60
or
days, 90
60 days.
days?
It's great if it serves you, but not so much when it restricts your business, from receiving money faster, sooner, right? One of our clients is a prime example. So, obviously, like everyone wants to delay the payments to the suppliers, but everyone wants the money in faster.
Yeah.
And so I would recommend a lot of businesses review their payment terms and conditions, and because at the end of the day, like, it is your business. Nothing's stopping you from revising your payment terms, right?
Yeah.
You might have maybe two different sets of payment terms, something generic for everyone and maybe something specialized for these special clients of
Yeah.
yours. But the important part of it is like look into it and see where the constraints are, because if that is the one bit that is limiting your business to receive cash faster, it's an easy thing to fix.
Yeah,
Right.
and it can literally be as small as that, right? It's like just literally renegotiating payment terms, and it can be like a really quick win. And I think you made me realize that, in that, like, it is literally a case of if you don't ask, you don't get. There are going to, it's always the way. You'll have some particular businesses who just won't budge on that at all.
Yeah.
But then you'll have other ones where it's a kind of process, and it's like, if you just say to them, this is the way we work,
Yeah.
we take payment up front, it is what it is. And if you're firm about it, they'll figure out a way if they really want to work with you. And I think we're in quite a fortunate position because we generate all of our leads inbound. So clients are coming to us and they want to work with us. So we actually can be quite firm and just say, it is what it is, take it or leave it, kind of thing, right? There are some instances where if we really want to work with someone, we might negotiate on that a little bit, but still, like, we have very few. I think we've got maybe one or two clients that's on like net 30-day terms, right? Which is unheard of for most agencies.
Yeah.
Most agencies operate on 30-day terms minimum, but it's like, that's not what we're going to do.
Yeah.
We don't run our business like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if it doesn't work with you. I'm sorry. And I always thought you were being like flipping hell, Jane, chill out. but people respect it.
Yeah.
People respect it.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's also a good reminder to just, review your payment terms and review your contractual agreements with your clients, Like I said,
And
it doesn't,
suppliers
your
and
suppliers, like, I like to get my money fast, I like to get paid fast, but I equally want to pay my staff and suppliers
you do.
fast,
Right? Yeah, like all of our suppliers, all our team, they get paid like
ahead of
instantly.
turnover
Yeah,
instantly, right? And so I just treat my clients and my staff the same way that I want to be treated. If someone owes me money, I want it on the agreed date. I don't want to be going and chasing for it, because it's an extra time and effort and admin stuff that I don't need. I could be using that time elsewhere. So yeah, like going back to this oversight or overlooking the balance sheet position versus P&L statement, where your revenue might be looking really good and great, but your actual cash receivable is delayed for so long that you're now in a deficit to support your business, right? It depends on the type of the business basically that you have. Maybe for kind of like brick and mortar store businesses that have inventory that is literally the bloodline, the cash is a bloodline, right? Anything at any point can happen to your inventory, and you need that cash to replace it. There could be damages, there could be spoilage, and you need to have that facility to operate really, really fast. And so reviewing every aspect of your financial arrangements, I think, is super important. It was one of the clients who didn't want to charge their customers or receive money online via Stripe because the fees were expensive. And yes, it is, and I class it as an operational fee, part of the operation of your business. But if that means that I get money faster, why not?
It's a good point. Yeah, yeah. So
You
I guess
know,
there's like a trade-off between kind of like how fast can we get cash into the
yeah,
business versus like, is it worth trading off for the small percentage increase in transaction fee? And obviously, transaction fees, especially with large volumes, they can add up.
yeah,
But again, it is that question, because if you've got, it's like people say, cash is king.
yeah.
Right? If you've got cash in the bank, you can afford to do more. You can afford to invest in more inventory, invest in more staff, whatever it is, whatever kind of business you're running. And I think this also comes down to then kind of like the ability to forecast accurately as well and to plan. I think a lot of businesses underestimate when they're creating forecasts or budgets. The biggest mistake I see when clients say like, hey, look, here's our forecast, here's our budget, here's what we're kind of planning to do this year. They don't account for the increase in acquisition costs that come with scale. It's very often, a business might be doing, I don't know, let's say they're doing £500,000 a month in sales, right? And they're like, okay, we want to get to £1 million or £1.5 million a month in sales. And they look at their acquisition costs right now and their conversion rate right now, and they assume that's going to stay the same. And it's like, no. At that level of scale, if you're scaling your advertising, if you're scaling your marketing that aggressively, your acquisition costs are not going to stay the same. You might be lucky, like if you're simultaneously working on conversion rate optimization and other refinements and things like that, you might be able to get it to balance out. But generally, and what people don't understand about this, I did a video on this recently, but as you begin scaling your ads, when you start advertising, you are attracting customers who are at the bottom of the funnel. That's what most of these ad platforms will do. They will hunt for the customers who are ready to buy right now. Okay, so you might get a decent acquisition cost. As you start scaling the budget up, what happens is you're going higher up the funnel. So you're reaching people who, they could be potential customers, but they're just at the awareness stage. They're not ready to buy right now. So it's going to take longer to convert them. So naturally then your acquisition costs are increasing, your conversion rate's going down. That's not necessarily a problem. That's just what happens with scale. Now, there are other things you can do, like, by using things like advertorial funnels or strategic kind of blog articles and stuff, if you're in B2B, to help to accelerate that awareness process and start kind of guiding customers through the funnel. But like just having this like blanket view on like things are just going to stay the same
Or increase in the kind of like a proportionate ratio.
exactly, yeah, you have to factor in that these things are naturally going to increase. And I think to your point as well, also though, thinking about cash flow.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to be able, again, whether you're like an e-commerce brand and you're investing in inventory, whether you're B2B, a service business, and you need to invest in more staff, like whatever it is, like you have to factor in these additional costs that come along the way.
Interestingly, on that whole scaling example, one thing that a lot of businesses don't realize, and bad marketers don't advise them on that, is as you scale your budget, like you said, naturally the acquisition cost will increase because you're just going after a different audience now. But with that in mind, what people don't necessarily think about is that at that level you'd need way more creatives to test, and creatives may
Sure.
cost money, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a video asset or imagery, etc. So that is something that people often overlook because they think, oh, I can just go after the new audience with the same assets. It doesn't work like that. Different messaging, everything's different basically, and that difference costs money, and that money is part of your advertising costs that people don't count or completely forget about.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, there's so many things, right? It applies in like so many different areas. Customer service, customer service queries are going to go up naturally. Like there's so many parts of the business that are going to be affected that it's really important to be accounting for. These things are just going to become more and more important the more AI starts automating a lot of these things. Again, like I said earlier, the playing field is just going to be completely leveled. Most brands out there are going to have access to the same skill in terms of media buying because AI is going to be doing that. We're all going to have access to the same AIs, the same platforms, and they're going to be able to, really strategically place those media budgets. So really your differentiator comes in your content, it comes in your website, your understanding of the customer journey, your ability to deliver an amazing customer experience, your ability to forecast and budget and plan effectively so that you're not hit by these unexpected things, the ability to blow your customers away.
So with the example of COVID and lockdown, if you remember, a lot of businesses, hospitality businesses, brick and mortar businesses were shut down, right? And if your balance sheet looks bad, when I say bad, that means you have a lot of outstanding, receivables that you're waiting money from your customers or from your suppliers. But at the same time, you need to still pay service rent, for your storage facilities, whatever operational costs. That is an unexpected thing. And so if you don't have cash, basically, because your payment terms maybe didn't allow for it, you're very much screwed. With the recent tariffs and instabilities and changes in AI and technology, this can happen anytime. Another COVID, another lockdown hits, and if you're out of cash, you're screwed. Things happen so fast these days that if you're the limiting factor, or you're not limiting factor, if you're the blocker in your own business, then you're the one who's basically drowning your business, I think. And I think it's really, really important to start reviewing your processes for every business and see how inflexible you really are, and then start changing that to be a bit more agile and adaptable to the fast changes in this economic environment right now.
How do you think, what would be some examples of how to become more agile?
I think a little bit more flexible on some of the traditional ways of how we used to run the business. One example, I'm not naming clients, kind of business names, but one of the pushbacks I always receive is that's how we've always been doing this. That's how we've always been invoicing our customers or our suppliers, or prefer this way. And so, yes, you've been doing it for 25 years when times were different, but now everything is different. The way people shop, the way people pay, the way people store their money, the way the people kind of just do business is different. And so if you're stuck with your systems because you've always had it for 20 years, you're once again limiting your business growth and flexibility. If you're stuck with your current payment provider or payment processing provider, again, you're limiting yourself. So that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think sometimes it's really difficult though, isn't it? Because there are definitely instances, I think, where the longer it goes on for, the bigger you get, it becomes such a what's the word? It becomes so difficult to untangle that web. I remember one of our clients where, multi-million-pound business, and they were literally running, they had MS-DOS systems that they were running.
Very antiquated system.
So antiquated, and it's they'd I don't know how they'd even got it working, but they just kind of evolved it over time, and it had gotten to the stage where there's no developer who can even work on that anymore. They can't expand it. It doesn't integrate with anything. It doesn't integrate with any CMS or whatever their website's built on. And it's what do you do at that stage? Because it's I remember them saying, they were we would literally have to close down the business probably for a month to unwind, unravel everything, and we'd be dead. We'd be dead in the water. And it's almost I think what I heard from what you were saying is it's kind of the importance of almost creating a moat around yourself. So when these things do happen, maybe a situation like that, or whether it's again a lockdown, tariffs, whatever it is, if you can create a big enough moat to protect yourself when those things happen, and it can be anything, even something as simple as your let's say your Google ad account or your Meta ad account, TikTok ad account getting blocked or shut down. These things happen,
Yeah.
and very often it can be like the biggest acquisition channel for a business, literally like that overnight, it can be shut down, which can be catastrophic, especially if you haven't built a moat around you, if you haven't built some other channels, or, and that's why I think it's really, to your point, like it's really important to be thinking about not only being flexible and agile, but making sure that you have other ways in which you can acquire customers, other ways in which you can bring revenue into the business.
Yeah.
One of the things I found really interesting recently, I've seen quite a few brands adopting this, particularly in like the e-com space, is shifting away from the kind of typical loyalty programs and actually having like paid membership programs. Like I think it was True Classic Teas was like the first company I saw doing this, and it's super cheap. It's like, I think it's like $2 a month or $1 a month or something, which is nothing. But if you can get, like 5,000 or 50,000 of your, especially for like large brands as well, if you can get 50,000 of your like loyalist customers doing that, that's 50 grand a month you've got coming in. And the great thing about that as well, you can use that towards hosting like private events and meetups for your VIP customers. And what's then going to happen, again, when you think about the long-term implications here, they're going to be sharing that on socials. Other people are going to want to get involved. Other people are going to start getting exposure to True Classic Teas. And it's like there's other knock-on effects that these small things can actually have. And again, it just helps to create a moat for you. And even to the extent of, again, coming back to that kind of 1% earlier with like, referral programs and things like that, I find with a lot of them, it's kind of like, we get asked this by customers a lot. It's like, oh, what referral program should I use? What's the best like referral app? And it kind of comes back to what we were saying earlier, right? It's like, sure, you might have an app with a slightly better user interface, and they might have some cool feature, and you can, it does whatever. But the biggest referral driver you will get is from giving customers an amazing experience.
Agree.
There are so many, like when I think about it, the brands that I've shared with friends or family, I've never shared one because they had a really cool referral incentive. I've shared it because it was so flipping good and I wanted my friends and family to know about it or get involved. The fact they had a referral scheme was just a bonus. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
But I've never shared anything just because they had a referral scheme. And it drives me insane that I think businesses don't think about that. They think it's the app or the marketing that's going to get you the results. It's like, no, you have to have a flipping good product. You have to, and it's not even the product, right? It's the experience you give people.
Yeah. I think the biggest short-sightedness that businesses have is that maybe they're put off by the initial upfront costs that they need to deal with in order to implement that particular new process, right? And they fail to realize how that initial outlay of funds benefits the business way into the future in the long term. I do have a client like this in my portfolio who basically like, oh no, too expensive. And it just takes forever to explain how that value or that cost, that number, however much it may be, actually over time pays back. And if implemented right, it actually can be recovered within first few months. It just depends on the strategy and what you're doing, I think. And it's a shame. It's a shame. And I guess that's the importance of cash is important, is that if you do have enough cash saved up, you can afford that initial, investment to change your processes to benefit your business in the long term. I think it just depends on the nature of the business. So I was thinking about the subscriptions earlier this week. We have a couple of clients on a subscription business. So as you know, once you go into a subscription kind of program with whoever, most businesses will do offer cancel anytime, cancel after the first month. And most businesses will offer the first month with tons of discounts and things like that, free shipping and extra bonuses and extra gifts and things like that. And then people get that for the first month and then they cancel, because someone else comes better, better offer, better gifts, better terms of service, etc. So maybe it needs to be a 3 month commitment. It just depends on the product. For example, if it's a supplement or if it's something that requires for a user to kind of experience it for several months in order to see the benefits, whatever, hair growth, skin changes, for example, I don't know, whatever this may be, especially within their health and body changes, maybe the subscription needs to be minimum 3 months commitment.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think, like, of anything like that, and this applies to anything. This can apply to B2B, it can apply to D2C, subscription brands, like whatever. Like, setting expectations is key.
Yeah.
Right? Like, people need to know, like, how long is it going to take to start seeing the outcome here, and not making those kind of false promises. I think is a really good point. But it does come back to, and for anyone listening to this, I just do want to re-emphasize, like, it doesn't matter how amazing or compelling you make your subscription offer, if you don't have a good product that delivers results, people are going to cancel it.
Yeah.
And they will find one that does. So, like, everything has to come with the product. You have to get the product right first. You have to get the service right first, because then you don't then have to put these golden handcuffs on people. They will just want to stay. Like, that is the play. The play is make a damn good product that people just want to keep. Then you don't need to worry about all these things. It's kind of funny sometimes, like, the amount of requests we get for like CRO audits, and the amount of, we've audited everything from kind of, small pre-revenue startups up to like Fortune 500 companies. And it blows my mind how many businesses, even like, these 7, 8, 9-figure brands, who they are so desperately just trying to like claw away at all of these little, like, oh, we just need to make this more compelling or optimize this. And it's like, I just don't think people like the product. Or like, you're not giving them a good experience. Like, if I go onto Google and I look at Reddit, have you seen all the people complaining about your service on Reddit? Have you seen all the negative reviews that you're getting on Trustpilot recently since you've been and this is the thing that normally happens. It's like, and it's very, very common to see this when businesses have raised investment, have raised like venture capital or whatever it is. They scale so aggressively because they're under so much pressure from investors to hit certain numbers, and operations fall apart.
Yep.
And you see it. You can literally see the story by looking at the reviews. They had amazing reviews to begin with, and then it drops off a cliff.
Yeah.
And then they come to us saying like, oh, can you fix it? Can you fix our conversion rate? It's like, no, it doesn't matter how damn good we make your website. All I need to do is go onto Google and I'm going to be put off. You can't recover from things like that.
Yeah.
You can't. It's such a shame, and it's so important for businesses like not to overlook those things,
Yeah. It's really incredible how operations is the area most overlooked. Because like you said, customer experience is everything.
Well, marketing's the sexy part there, right?
Yes.
Like, that's why people just, they just think about the marketing. It's like, it's funny, right? Because we often talked about this with our roles in the business. It's kind of like, marketing is the one who gets all the credit, right? It's like the cool kid, the celebrity, like all the paparazzi are like, oh, marketing, yeah. And then there's operations, like operations and finance. It's kind of like, boo. Nobody wants operations and finance.
Because it's the difficult part.
100% is the difficult part, yeah.
And like, this is where you need to be as creative as a marketer, but in the operational side of the business, you have to look.
Love that, yeah. That's really
cool. on the marketing side, you can be the creative genius, coming out with cool ideas to attract the customers. But then on the operational side, you have to be creative into how are you going to manage all of this further down the line. How are you going to manage, inquiries, customer service, customer experience, refunds, and all that stuff.
That's really cool. I've never actually like considered that before, but yeah, applying creativity. It's actually like to shout out one of our other clients, actually, Business of Creativity. This is one of the things that they kind of talk about a lot. It's creativity for growth now, isn't it?
Yeah.
They've rebranded to, but that's a big part of, I think, in kind of John Hegarty's like program that he's built out. It's kind of like, how can you apply creativity to any aspect of the business, right? It's not only marketing that it applies to, because I think people do, when you think of creativity, it's kind of like this wishy-washy marketing thing. So I just let marketing kind of do that, right? but it does. You're right. It's a really, really, I think, quite profound statement in that, like, every area of the business needs to be creative.
A well-oiled machine that operates congruently, every aspect of the business, every department of the business needs to be creative as to like how are we individually or departmentally kind of adapt to such fast change in the economic environment, social environment, technological environment. And you have to be creative. You have to have your fingers on the pulse and just see what's happening and then adapt fast.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I think the whole customer experience thing as well. Like, this is actually something that we've been on a journey with as well, right? And we've been trying to improve this. And just like to bring it back to what we were saying earlier about like expectations as well, like setting expectations. This is definitely something that I've learned the hard way, like doing sales calls with clients, and it's like I'm very, very conservative when I'm speaking to clients. Like a lot of the time, and it's funny as well because I think in the agency space, like most businesses are used to being sold the dream. Right? They have all these agencies, cold outbound messaging them saying, "Hey, we're going to make you 50 times ROI in the next 90 days, or we'll give you your money." Like crazy bold claims like that, right? And they come to us, and I'm like, we might not make your money back for a flipping year. Like, we don't know how long it's going to take. And like, I think, and it's funny because actually we get a lot of people signing up because of that, because I think it's so just refreshing and honest. But this isn't, I'm not doing this as some tactic. Like, I'm doing it because I genuinely want to set realistic expectations. But what I think we've been doing a much better job at recently is kind of like signposting and giving like almost like a very, very clear roadmap and transparency over like how this is going to look. Like, what are the lead indicators we're going to be tracking? What are the lag metrics we're going to be tracking? How do we know we're going in the right direction? And kind of having that clear transparency at like every step along the way. Right. And I think that's the key. And again, that's an example of, to your point earlier, for like subscription brands, of like, if it's going to take 90 days to start seeing results, don't try and kind of fall into this marketing thing of like, oh, results in 24 hours kind of thing. Like, no, like be honest about it. And actually, I think sometimes as well, I did a video a while ago on market saturation. And I think a lot of businesses don't think about this. I'll actually link to the video somewhere around this one. But in there, I was talking about, I can't remember who it was that kind of coined this term or who talked about it initially. It was in a book I read a long time ago. But it's this idea that for any market, they kind of go through, so you have kind of like quote unquote unsophisticated buyers. And that's not a kind of representation of their IQ. It just means like this market isn't sophisticated, like it's a fairly new market. As a market gets more and more saturated, it gets more sophisticated. Like, people know what to expect. They know the game. They know they bought for multiple brands before. They bought for multiple businesses in this sector. They've heard all the lies. They've heard all the claims. They're very savvy to it, basically, right? And actually, what can work better is like when it gets to a certain point in market saturation, instead of making all these claims that all your competitors are doing, actually going back to square one and just being completely honest can be the play that helps you stand out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I found with marketing.
Yeah.
Is actually when all marketing agencies are out there screaming at the top of their voice about how amazing their results are, I'm the one saying like, I don't know, it might work, it might not.
Yeah. Or you pivot and you not pivot like drastically, but maybe you just change your product or service, pivot that a little bit, and now you're in a new market. It doesn't have to be drastic. It could still be in the same niche. You're just focusing on slightly different. Whilst everyone else is scrambling for the same, you're now exiting that market with a better idea and a better service, rather than keep adding on to these extra bonuses and bolt-ons and add-ons and everything else. And because at that point you're now competing on price, really, because everyone else has started doing this. So I would rather leave that market, and get into a new one, but not completely new one. Similar, same but different kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even because that comes even with like, again, creating competitive moats, or this can come with scale as well, where you do want to start looking at different kind of customer cohorts and different segments of the market that you can start kind of breaking into. I think sometimes businesses do that too early on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they really kind of understand what it takes to actually do that. If you're looking to reach a new segment of the market, you have to have dedicated landing pages, you have to have dedicated marketing materials, you have to work on your messaging to that particular segment of the audience. And it's like, if you don't have a marketing team in place to own that, it's really flipping hard to do that. Like it takes a lot of thought to actually do that successfully at scale if you're like really trying to break into a new segment of the market. So I think, yeah, it is funny. It's one of those things where I see sometimes, people say, oh, we've got, 7 different customer personas, 7 different avatars. And it's like, we want to reach all of them. And it's like with what budget?
Yeah.
Like, and this is the other thing as well. It's kind of like the more you dilute your budget, the harder it's going to be for you to then be able to kind of scale it. It's kind of finding, I think, to your point, those like, what is that one blue ocean you can find that you can then scale.
Yeah. This whole example of like, competing in the same segment with other people and keep adding bonuses reminded me of the reel I've seen recently. I think it was Instagram or YouTube. An example was very, very simple, but so effective. And it was like, imagine you're a gardener or a farmer and you sell compost. And so you have a lot of compost, and maybe some manure as well from your animals of your farm. And then you go in the market and you sell it. Great compost quality, just sprinkle it or use it on your veg patch, and then you got your tomatoes growing, blah, blah, blah. And you're the only one. And business is great, and you're selling your quote unquote shit really successfully. Then some really smart grandma who's also running a farm comes in with the same shit and starts selling the same compost, and everyone's looking at the grandma and she looks so sweet and approachable, and she's selling it for the same price or even cheaper maybe. And suddenly you're losing the market to a sweet looking grandma selling the same shit. Then what do? Oh, you then continue to selling your shit, but maybe you add a shovel. Now you add a shovel. Maybe then you add a basket or a trolley. Then you start, then some granddad comes into the market and says, oh, I will deliver you with your shit and the shovel and the bucket and the trolley. And then by that point, there's several of these grandmas and granddads selling the same shit as you do. And now everyone's competing on price. And that's the point where you go, you know what? I'm no longer selling compost shit. I'm selling grown tomatoes.
What I think, it's a funny example, and I think what it makes me think about as well, and I think this kind of brings it back full circle to what we were saying about earlier. Like, the competitive advantage is going to be things like brand. Like, businesses don't think about that. Like, when AI has just fully leveled the playing field and it's taken over a lot of these kind of front end marketing tasks, the differentiator is going to be your branding, your messaging, your content, your ability to tell a story. If you look, one of the best examples I can think of this is like a brand like Liquid Death, right? Like how they've just come along and just I can't remember what their revenue is. I think they're in like the multiple hundreds of millions in revenue from canned water, right? It's insane. And it's just, when you look at their branding, they are so totally polar opposite, but it's an identity thing. People buy from them because it's this kind of like rebellious misfit. Like there is something about the brand that's just like really anti-establishment in a market where you've got these kind of huge conglomerates like Evian, Buxton Water, you know, those big players like that. And they've just come along with these like insane cans of water that looks like it's a flipping energy drink or a can of beer or something, right? And that I think is going to be the differentiator that brands need to think about. The branding, the 1% wins, how you can increase your customer value over time. That's going to be where the difference comes in. Jane, this has been an awesome episode. So thank you again. It's always good to have you on sharing
Always
your
a pleasure.
insights. So thank you. And we'll see you guys in the next one.